Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the WE Banter. First off, though, in the name of full disclosure, I want to thank the maker of the knife, actually the designer of the knife. This is a knife that was designed by Ben Peterson. He is actually formerly of BladeHQ, the What Is Up Guys, although I completely butchered that. Sorry, Ben. But nonetheless, he sent this guy along to me. I told him, as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk. He still sent it along. We do have to assume that this is the very best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and I've done my best not to let that, or the fact that I know Ben well and actually like him as a human, affect the nature of my review. But there you go, full disclosure. Next thing, size comparison. Here it is against the Spyderco Delica. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2. And so we see actually in terms of sharp and blade length, they are very, very similar. Blade profile as well. And then here we go against the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. So we can see not a very big knife here. And actually, let me do a quick comparison against a ruler, because a ruler is a useful thing for size comparison. In fact, it is the tool. And we see that this guy comes in under 3 inches, pretty uncontroversially. So there is that. Next thing, like I said, this is actually created, the Banter here is it's created by Ben Peterson, formerly of BladeHQ. He left BladeHQ to go on his own way at a certain point, but nonetheless, and it is being produced directly by WE Knives, which is a Chinese company that I think most of us in the knife community are familiar with now. But there we go. That's how this works. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. Okay, so on the good side to start with, the size on this is pretty solid. Look, in terms of overall size in the pocket, it is a relatively small piece. It's coming in more or less under the size of the Spyderco Delica. It carries well with a deep carry clip and everything like that, and the blade length on it makes it pretty inoffensive. This is a knife that, although certainly the blue and silver one is going to be more so, it's just not going to scare people. So that's kind of a nice thing. I think the size is going to work well in a lot of people's everyday lives. Next thing, the clip on this guy is good. It is a deep carry style clip with countersunk screws in there, and so you can see there is nothing sticking up underneath the clip. That is great. That is exactly how these should be done, and that is a great thing to see. Next thing, this, like I said, carries very easily. It feels like it's almost designed for the key pocket on your jeans, for that that little pocket above your pocket that this can just slip right into. It's nice and square. It fits in there. It's a pretty good piece for that. And so it carries very, very nicely. Next thing, lock bar access on this guy is quite easy because of this proud liner. What I mean by that is that you can see here that the liner is actually sticking up slightly above the surrounding liners, and as a result, it's very easy to get in there, and because of the scallops, unlock this guy once the knife is unlocked, and so that can be a great thing. And actually, it's also, because it's proud, it can be very easy for people with a variety of types of fingers, including long fingernails, which can be helpful for, well, people who like to keep long fingernails. So there you go. There you go. Next thing, let's talk about the action. The action on this is good. This is a knife that is running on bearings. It is running on little tiny bearings in there rather than being on phosphor bronze washes. Actually, that surprised me. For whatever reason, I thought this was going to be on phosphor bronze for a bit, but nonetheless, it's on bearings, and it has a very nice detent. It flies open very, very reliably, no wrist at all, and it's very easy to close with a very nice, reasonably drop-shotty little action here. The action on this is very satisfying. It is smooth, it is satisfying, and it's actually it's an action that I think would make a lot of people fall in love with the idea of a knife action, so that's a great thing. And next thing, this is a very conscientious design. What I mean by that is that this was clearly made by somebody who has handled a lot of pocket knives. And in fact, I know it was made by somebody who has, because, well, Ben's handled a lot of knives, right? And so a lot of these things feel like he's made the right decision on the basis of having handled a bunch of things. And so I find that the conscientiousness of the design is very much a thing there. Then finally, on the good side, this guy is a very everyman-friendly, or every woman, I suppose, every person, friendly pocket knife, particularly the blue and satin version, which is the other version. I got the high-speed, low-drag black for some reason. But nonetheless, that feels like a knife that's going to be very appealing and very interesting to a lot of people, and not just people in the knife community. There are pieces that are maybe a little bit more like, okay, this is an example, the Spyderco Canis, whatever the heck it is. It's basically going to be, this is going to be a knife person knife. This is something that I could hand to pretty much anybody, and they go like, oh yeah, that looks good. It looks like a pocket knife. I understand how it works, etc. This is a very, very everyman sort of friendly knife. So to me, that's what's good. This is going to be working for a bunch of different people. It's got a nice conscientious design, a satisfying action, easy lock bar access. It carries super easily. It has a deep carry clip and a pretty inoffensive size. The great side to me is this blade. The blade should always be the great part of a pocket knife. Well, okay, not necessarily in the Nick Shabazz great sense, but it definitely should be an important thing, and indeed it is here. This is using S35VN, which is a steel that I think works very well here, in that it is going to have great edge retention, but it's also going to be sharpenable by most folks. It has a very thin edge. It's got a sharpening choil on there. It's got a very tall, flattish grind. It is a great blade for actually cutting things, and that's very, very important for a pocket knife, and so it's something I'd love to see, and I think the blade, to me, is 100% the best part of this piece. On the bad side, to start with, this is very subjective, but why the high-speed, low-drag version, right? I like Ben a lot, but he is not a tactical operator to the best of my knowledge. Or maybe he's a really, really good one, and therefore I never found out he was high-speed, low-drag. But either way, this just feels a little bit strange to me. It feels like the target market for this knife is exactly not the target market for an all-black, blacked-out version of it. So that seems like a strange approach. I much prefer the look of the blue and the satin one. Next thing, this guy needs just a little tiny hint more sharpening choil. There's just a little tiniest smile at the very back of the blade here. The plunge goes a little further. It's not a big deal at all. We're talking a millimeter or so, and you can do that at home if you'd like, but it's a little thing. Next thing, the thumb stud on this guy is, for certain cuts, going to be in the slicing path. It's, for the most part, not really an issue. I'm nitpicking hard here, but, that's what it is. But there is a possibility that, especially if you're cutting into something, that something will snag on the thumb stud. So there's that. Next thing, the proud liner on this guy. Now, look, this works fine, but it is a little bit of a hot spot, especially if you're really gripping down on this. You're going to be feeling that liner a little bit on your hand. This isn't the end of the world. It's reasonably soft, such that it's not a major issue, but there's a reason I think that many people, instead of doing this kind of an approach, will instead scallop out the liner a little bit and then have both sides be flush. So scallop out this side of the scale here so you can press straight across rather than otherwise. Like I said, it's not the end of the world, but it's a thing. Next thing, this is a little bit on the pricey side for what I believe to actually be the target market of this knife, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but it's $108. So this is not an expensive knife, and for S35VN, nice, it's not terrible, but it's definitely a little bit on the pricier side, and so it's a price that's going to really rule out a number of non-knife people, and so there's that. And then finally on the bad side, and this is very subjective, but it's a very average-looking knife, and in fact, I would go so far as to say that Ben knows that. Let me reach over here and steal my mouse pad from my mouse. That's right, I have a mouse pad. Welcome to 1990. This mouse pad, which was also sent to me by, actually, Ben, you can see nafs.com is his new thing, but nonetheless, this here is, as you can tell, the Banter, right? But the reason that it's being used on this mouse pad is that it is precisely sort of your stereotypical knife. If you were to, throw 1,000 knives through a machine learning algorithm, chances are you'd get one that looks kind of similar to this on the other side of it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But this looks like sort of the prototypical folding knife that most people are going to talk about. And there's a reason that something like this belongs well on a poster like this. If you were to use something completely crazy, then, a lot of people would be like, that's not a knife. This is a knife. And so I think the fact that it is very, very average is good in some ways, because, well, there's a reason that tools average out to look in the way they do, right? The average hammer doesn't have two heads on it facing, at 90-degree angles, because that would be a dumb choice, right? He's made all the smart choices, but as a result, though, it doesn't end up standing out if you were a person who's got 50 knives already. And so, to me, at least, that's what's bad here, is that it is a very, very average knife, and I think there's an area to which it is boring in the good sense, right? Of like, it just works, it's a solid tool, but you don't think about it that much. It's a little bit on the pricey side. The proud liner can be a bit of a hot spot. The thumb stud's a little in the slicing path, needs a bit more sharpening choil, and the all-black thing just doesn't make sense to me here. Final conclusion, this is a knife that has a lot of good to it, right? It's got a nice size, nice carry, nice unlocking action design, and a really good blade. It's got some bad, too, with the all-black choice being a little bit weird here. A few little details that could be used. The price is a little bit higher, and it is kind of a tall glass of vanilla. But in practice, this was a knife that took me a while. This was a knife that, as a reviewer, I had to spend some time thinking about to really get my opinion straight. And there's a reason for this, because as a knife geek, this is actually not that interesting. As a knife geek, it's a good knife. I can acknowledge it to be an absolutely fine and good knife, but it's kind of a tall, cool glass of vanilla, right? There's nothing going on here that's super exceptional. There's nothing going on here that's like, oh my God, yes. Everything on it is very, very good. And as a result, though, I could acknowledge it to be a great tool, a tool that could be perfectly fine. It wasn't something that I was super excited about. It felt like a good knife. And as I wrote the review initially, it felt like I was damning the knife with faint praise, and that's not my goal here. I couldn't figure out how the knife could feel so good at some level, how it could be so good as a tool, and yet leave me emotionally completely untouched. And then it kind of hit me. This knife isn't for me. I mean, obviously, no knives are designed for me, Nick Shabazz, but it's not for me as an archetype, so to speak. It's not for me as a knife geek. It could be a great knife for me. I could carry this, and it could work fine till the end of my days if I weren't a specific kind of crazy, but this isn't for me. Instead, what I think Ben has done here is he has designed the perfect knife for a non-knife person, for a knife muggle, basically, to use the Harry Potter term for somebody who is not, in the wizarding world, for somebody who this could be great for a person who needs an edge tool in their life, which, by the way, I think is pretty much everybody, but has absolutely no idea that there is a knife community, who has no sense of knife Instagram, who might not post a picture of the knife on their personal Instagram because, that's a little bit edgy. And anyways, for the people who don't know what a BladeHQ is and who think S35VN must be the number on the back of a plane, right? This is a knife that I think is perfect for these people. And the reason I say that is because it combines a steel that is going to have great edge retention, so it's going to stay sharp forever in their mind, but it's also relatively easy to maintain, so you can take care of it with a relatively basic set of tools, like a Spyderco Shopmaker or something like that. Take care of this forever. It's got a very excellent utility-focused blade, because the first thing that a knife needs to do is cut things, and especially for people who are not as interested in pocket jewelry, if it doesn't cut well, it's going to be terrible, right? It's got very easy operation for a variety of folks, a very inoffensive overall package. All of this adds up to EDC perfection for somebody for whom EDC refers to a gigantic rave out in the desert someplace, right? EDC is not something that a lot of people think about, but this could be a great everyday carry tool for somebody who doesn't know that that's a thing. It's pricey for the market, absolutely, and that's kind of the biggest misstep in serving that population. This guy landed a little bit higher than I think is going to, be an easy gift for a lot of people. But there were a lot of folks who need this and might not be comfortable spending 3 figures on a pocket knife for themselves. But the fact remains that I think that for that population, this may be the best thing out there because it's safe. And that's one other thing that I shouldn't have to mention. But a lot of people who aren't interested in the knife world will just get something at a gas station and assume, oh yeah, it's a knife. It's a good knife, right? And in practice, it is not. But this is a safe piece. It's a good utility piece, etc. And so this is not a knife that I personally, Nick Shabazz, would carry every day. Although it certainly could be. It's not something there. I want something maybe a little bit artsy, a little bit more geeky in the knife sense, with a little bit more panache or something along those lines. But it is a knife I could very easily see picking up for somebody else, for a family member who doesn't give a damn about EDC, but needs an edge tool, for somebody who wants to buy one good knife and use it for the rest of their days, or for that coworker who, we all know this coworker, by the way, who borrows your knife and then returns it a little slower each time and starts over time asking details like, oh, so that's a lock frame knife. That's kind of neat. That sounds a little bit fancy. That kind of person, right here, exactly, that is the banter. So I guess my final conclusions on this knife is that it is a very good knife. Even if it's not necessarily the best choice for me. And chances are, if you're watching this channel, although it would be a very solid piece for you, it's probably not your choice. But there's an even better chance that there's somebody in your life, if you're watching this channel right now, for whom this would be a gem, and for whom this knife simply couldn't get any banter. Okay, because it's like better, but with the N in there? No? Okay, anyways. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.